Welcome to Beyond the Beacon with Bishop Kevin Sweeney, a podcast of the Diocese of Paterson, New Jersey. Join us for weekly conversations about our Catholic faith, and together let's strive to live a life of faith, hope, and love. I'm Jay Agnish. With me is Bishop Kevin Sweeney. Bishop Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing well. I got to ask you. So, I know you're a Yankees fan and all that, but is there a part of you that roots for the Mets in some slight way, or is it really more of a absolute friction?
Next question.
Wow. Okay. All right. Because if they win tonight, they're going to be moving on. I give them
credit for. It's always, I think, good to see, as they say, gritty and gutty.
Okay.
Hard fighting, never give up, and they certainly have been that since, I guess, June.
Yeah.
From what I've heard and little I've seen, but always look forward to a Subway Series would be great. And I would have to be honest that that team that plays in Flushing, I always forget their name. They beat the Yankees 4 times this year in the Subway Series during the season. So, it would be a good fight. I'm very confident.
Maybe the pendulum will start swinging the other way. Yeah.
Excuse me?
The pendulum might start swinging the other way. Maybe the Mets might start winning. All right. Well, let's move on.
Let's talk. Time to pray.
Yeah. Why don't we go straight to the prayer then, Bishop?
Well, we're recording today on Thursday. What's today's date? October 3rd. When the day in the midst of some beautiful feast days. We didn't celebrate at Mass this Sunday. Past Sunday was the Feast of the Archangels, Gabriel, Raphael, and Michael. Monday the 30th was St. Jerome, the great scripture scholar, translated the scriptures into Latin. Tuesday, I was happy to be at Del Barton School for the Feast of St. Therese, the little flower. And then yesterday was the Feast of the Guardian Angels, so maybe we'll say that prayer that some learned, and maybe we should make it more popular again. But and then tomorrow I'm looking forward to being at St. Anthony's Parish in Butler with the Franciscan friars as we'll celebrate the Feast of St. Francis, and I'll be at St. Francis of Assisi Parish in Haskell for confirmation in the evening tomorrow. So
will you be blessing any animals?
We might be tomorrow at St. Anthony's. Yeah. So awesome. A great time of year for like an all-star lineup of saints that we celebrate in these days. But so let us place ourselves in God's presence in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. As we ask God's help, blessing, and guidance, we ask the help and intercession of our Blessed Mother and all the saints, and also that help of our guardian angels as we pray. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thanks, Bishop. So we're going to be talking about elections and public policy and all sorts of stuff along those lines.
Everybody's favorite.
So we're going to have fun with it. But I want to ask you a fun question for you, and please don't forget everyone is welcome to send in questions for the Bishop beyond@patersondiocese.org. Bishop, do you recall when you turned 18 and voted in your first election, who was running? Was it a presidential year or not? Or
I don't have a vivid memory of going into the booth for the first time, but I know I did vote. I turned 18 in 1988, so it was President Reagan's second. No, excuse me. It would have been President Reagan was finishing, so it would have been George W. Bush against Michael Dukakis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right. Then yes, but it makes me think of conversations with Cardinal Dolan. The Al Smith dinner is coming up, and it was interesting to hear because Vice President Harris has said that she has other obligations and won't be there, and Cardinal Dolan said that the last time that happened was, I guess, in 1984 when Mondale was running, and he won only one state, his home state, or two, I forget. But it was President Reagan won 48 or 49 states. that was Cardinal Dolan's comment. You can go to his conversation.
Yeah.
But and they're hopeful that Vice President Harris might still change her mind this time. So it's coming up next week or the week after.
I think it's the 17th.
I wonder if he did this last year. I think I wonder if Cardinal Dolan is flying home again from Rome because the synod. And we're praying for the synod on synodality that just began, and we were with Cardinal Tobin last Thursday for the Mass and Rally and March for Life, which we'll talk more about. But Cardinal Tobin said the Mass on Thursday, and on Friday he was leaving for the synod for Rome for the synod on synodality. So it'll be. I know Cardinal Dolan talked about, unless he's. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I don't know. How's he going to pull it off? Yeah.
Well, somebody helped him with the private plane, I think, last year. So yes, I did vote, and I think I voted in each of the presidential elections, and I think I voted just about every 2 years.
The midterms.
Yeah, right.
Good. Well, we're going to talk about the
I try to vote every
voting.
year, and more recently, so we got to get out and vote. It's a part of our responsibility. We'll learn more about that.
Yeah, good stuff, Bishop. Thanks for sharing that. And we're going to talk more about the importance of voting. So with us today, Jim King is the Executive Director of the New Jersey Catholic Conference, representing the Catholic bishops of New Jersey on matters of public policy. He's monitoring what's happening at the statehouse and ensuring our community has a voice in public policy issues. When he's not defending the church, he is coaching his 5th grade son's football team, the Falcons, as their defensive coordinator. He and his wife, Sarah, have 3 children, Brendan, Megan, and Declan, and are hosting an exchange student from Germany. His oldest son, Bishop, plays golf in high school. And so welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Thank you,
Brendan.
Bishop.
I don't know if it's my brother's name.
I think I remember you mentioned that, yes. Right. Yeah. So he completed his 2nd season with the golf team, and now he's turning his focus to getting ready for wrestling season. So,
wow, God bless him.
Yeah. So I tell him, I don't know if wrestling's the best sport to help you with your golf game because it might injure your shoulders or.
But it could build up his muscles.
It could.
Yeah, and endurance, right?
It could. Yes.
And 2 younger daughters.
1 younger daughter.
2 boys.
2 boys. They bookend the daughter who's right in the middle.
Okay.
She reminds my wife and I every day that she's not only the only child, she's the only daughter, so she has it really difficult in life. So, but she's cheerleading. Her and her brother go to the same high school. She's a freshman. He's a sophomore. And our youngest, Declan, feels finally like an independent student because it's the first time in his life that he's at school without an older sibling there, so he kind of feels like he's able to run.
And this
school.
might be a topic for another show, but I remember we spoke not that long ago about some schools moving towards cell phone-free school days, right?
Yes.
You shared with me some communication, I think, from one of the schools.
Yes.
How is that going?
I don't think there's any issue with it, as I think more was made about it prior to the school year. I know my son was sitting there going, the administration doesn't know what they did. We're going to rise up and we're going to have them overturn the policy. And I don't think.
And meanwhile, they're now cell phone free for the day?
They are, well, yes, they're supposed to be cell phone free for the day, but without outing anyone, I'll say that I have discovered a couple of times that some are not staying cell phone free for the day.
But they're working towards the goal in the school.
The school has implemented a 100% no cell phone policy during the day. It has to stay in their lockers, and they have Chromebooks which they can use to email. I get several emails from my daughter throughout the day asking if she can stay after school or go over a friend's house. And but yeah, the cell phones are gone, and I haven't heard any complaints about it. I heard more complaints before the school year started. But now that the school year is in full swing, they don't come home going, if I only had my cell phone today.
There's a book, The Anxious Generation, that really is, I'm just finishing it, and it's a little scary to think, what the impact has been, he would say, since around 2010, 2012, with the combination of the introduction of the iPhone and smartphones, and then social media. And I think this brings us to the topic that we're here to discuss today, that as faithful disciples, as people of faith, we have a responsibility. Bishop Barron, who I love, always talks about, our Christian Catholic faith is not individualistic. It's not just for me to hold. When we receive that faith, we have a responsibility to share. Jesus calls us to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And certainly in Matthew 25, how we care for the least of our sisters and brothers, the hungry, the homeless, the stranger, and one of the ways we do that as a community or society is by decisions that our elected representatives make, right? How do we help those who are most in need? And so these questions and issues can become very complicated, but as Catholics and as Christians, we have responsibility to not only bring our voice to the public square, but bring our values and beliefs into the voting booth, and that's part of, I think that's somewhat of a description of what you do, Jim, as the director of the New Jersey Catholic Conference. Would that be?
I think that's one of the most accurate descriptions of what I do. The lead in talking about what our topic was today, faith and politics, the old adage is you never talk about them at a social function. So my wife reminds me every time we go to a party not to talk to anyone. My job is both
you can talk about coaching your son. That's okay, right? And your children.
Stand there and just shake your head. Don't say what you do. And but no, I think it was 100% spot on what we do. And when I was asked to step into the role of executive director, I gave one of my first interviews as executive director, and they said, well, how do you see your responsibility? And I said, I see it the same way all Catholics should see their responsibility. We're all called to be evangelizers. We're all called to be that salt of the earth. Now, who we evangelize to changes based on our positions in life, our responsibilities. So I view myself primarily as an evangelizer to the people at the statehouse. Now, some might say it's like Christ's gospel adage that you may not be welcome, a prophet's not welcome in their hometown, or if they don't receive the message, just shake the dust from your sandals and move on. But again, it's who are we called to deliver the message to in our lives? So, I think we're called to be evangelizers to our elected officials at the State House, at the federal level, and in some part helping others to realize that responsibility as well, because we have a moral responsibility to be engaged in the public square and the civil discourse and what's going on in society and what laws are passed and who's elected. So
how does it work on the ground? So you're meeting with lawmakers, having conversations?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really starts with relationship building. I think one of the greatest opportunities the church has is, given the diversity of issues we work on, we try to develop relationships with people who may on the surface appear not to be on our side on a couple of issues, but I think there's always something we can find to start building that bridge. We don't have to become adversarial with everyone. We use the term issues of mutual concern. I mean, if you any elected official you talk to that's ever received a letter from me, I always put that term mutual concern. There's something that we're always able to discuss with someone that.
It's easy to, or maybe seems to get highlighted things that we disagree with one another on, but there are things that those who might disagree on certain topics, other areas they are in agreement, right? And sometimes if we focus maybe on what we have in common, we can find ways to work together. And I'm sure a large part of your work, Jim, is building relationships, right?
Yes.
That we may be ideologically opposed, and they may know where the Catholic Church stands on certain issues, but if you're able to build a relationship with an elected official that, in his or her policy decisions, unfortunately may not agree with what we believe, but in building those relationships, it is possible to find some areas of common ground, right?
Certainly, and I think you can only find those areas if you're respectful, civil, and you try to find work that you can collaborate on together at first. I always say, it's difficult to go into a legislative office and ask someone to vote no on something if they don't know you, or if the only time they hear from you is if you're criticizing them for their positions. But if you can develop a positive relationship, and I say this to parish groups all the time, I say Knights of Columbus groups, I say get to know your elected officials, especially your state representatives, and when you have to reach out to them to vote no on a bill, at least they'll say, oh, I know this group, and maybe they won't, do what you want them to do or what you're asking them to do, but maybe they'll have a conversation with you, and slowly but surely you'll see the change come along. I rarely, and I have to say, I've been in governmental work and politics for almost 25 years now, and I don't think I've ever come across an instance where somebody's gone in to a meeting with elected official. The elected official has held one position, and they've gone in and made their case, and the elected official has come out saying, did a 180 on. Yeah, exactly. So it's.
But over time, they
yes.
might. I'm thinking back to. I know you've been on the podcast before, but we met for the first time over Zoom, and a number of times in the spring and early summer of 2020 when I was named as the new bishop, and in the transition time and in the midst of the lockdown, and that was my first introduction also to Cardinal Tobin and Bishop O'Connell in Trenton, Bishop Cecile in Metuchen, and Bishop Dennis Sullivan in the Diocese of Camden, and the auxiliary bishops in Newark are part of those conversations as well. And you host us or organize the meeting each quarter, and it's been interesting, and I'm so grateful to Cardinal Tobin, the bishops, and yourself, Jim, for kind of bringing me along, welcoming me in, and but it's been a great experience for me to see how our 5 dioceses work together as the Catholic Church here in New Jersey, coordinated by the Catholic Conference, and I think we had a great example of that working relationship this past Thursday at the first ever New Jersey State Mass Rally and March for Life.
Yes. As
we're grateful to the National March for Life group that had reached out, and as they're doing now in states since the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade, and so much now falls on state legislation and state lawmakers in terms of the protection of life. And Bishop O'Connell, I thought, as Cardinal Tobin celebrated the Mass, gave such a powerful homily. It's in our newspaper, and encourage anybody to read it. I was at one of our high schools, and I asked them to because I said to them, you could talk about it in religion class, but you can also talk about it in government and politics class, right? Because he, I think, articulated so well what we're trying to bring, not imposing our beliefs, and as he said, he talked about the scientific fact of where life begins. So maybe to say a word about working with Cardinal Tobin and the bishops in those quarterly meetings, and then maybe what it was like for yourself moving. It was a lot of. I know you met regularly with the pro-life directors, Respect Life directors of each diocese in the planning process. So, what was that experience like for you over these last recent months?
Well, I have to say, first, the quarterly meetings with the bishops are some of the most stressful times in my life.
Why would that be?
Leading up to the planning and the agenda.
Right.
I feel like I'm going before a firing squad because I never know what's going to be asked. But I always enjoy getting together with the bishops because I represent you and your brother bishops, and it's important for us as the conference to hear your thoughts, your objectives, what you would like us to represent the group on, and it's good to have that direction. So I'm always appreciative of the information I get. I might not always have an answer right away, and I might go, why am I being asked this? But I like having the clarity when I hear that feedback from the bishops. But in terms of the Mass for Life, the credit has to go 100% to the Respect Life directors. When the National March for Life organization announced that they were going to do a New Jersey base. Now, they had done similar marches previously in other states like Pennsylvania.
Right. Pennsylvania just had their second annual, right?
I believe third.
Oh, third.
They're out to third, but they've seen tremendous growth in attendance. This year, I believe there were almost up to 6,000 people attended in Harrisburg, and one of whom was my son. My daughter was supposed to go, but I believe she had a test that day, so we had to back her out. But my son's gone the last 2 years with his high school. He loves it. He marched a little bit with Archbishop Perez of Philadelphia,
and both your kids, they're involved, and your olders are involved in their local Respect Life.
They are. As a matter of
clubs
fact,
at the high school.
They are. As a matter of fact, my daughter is as we speak, is at the Archdiocese of Philadelphia's Respect Life Summit for high school students today.
Wow,
so
wonderful.
she
Wow.
left at 7:30 this morning. I think they were going to another high school somewhere in the Archdiocese, and she's going to spend the whole day with other high school students, attending talks on Respect Life issues, learning what they can do in their community to promote the culture of life. So we're very proud
I was
of
so
them.
happy with our high schools. I think all 7, 3 diocesan and the 4 other run by religious communities, all sent delegations, and I think there was I guess they had worked with the committee. Was it Notre Dame High School in Lawrenceville? The yellow shirts. They had a huge group that led the march, right?
I think that was a coordinated effort between the high school, the Mass Planning Committee, and the March Committee to get Notre Dame to lead the march. I agree, first of all, about the presence of the high school students. I thought the courage some of these high school students shown, and we weren't really greeted at all points of Trenton as we marched. We were shown that Bronx number 1 a couple of times as we joked. But I have to give a lot of credit to the high school students, because I thought about myself, and I don't know if I would have been able to show the same courage. I mean, as we were processing through the streets of Trenton, marching through the streets of Trenton, there were a couple of times where people voiced their disagreement with us in very colorful ways, and the high school students didn't back down. They held up their signs, and they were proud to be pro-life, proud to be part of the march. So I thought it was quite a testament to the spirit of life among our youth and young adults that were present.
Yeah,
so.
it was, and I remember also, I guess it was in our spring meeting with the bishops, the rally and march had been planned, and the date was chosen, and with the Respect Life coordinators, there was the request made to the bishops, could we have a mass, as I think they've learned in doing other state marches, that when there's a mass beforehand, it helps to increase the participation, and I think it brings a faith element into what we're doing as well. Obviously, the people of all faiths or no faith could come and witness on behalf of the dignity and value of life, and the care that we have for moms, and understanding of the situations that a woman can be in a pregnancy. That has to be part of our awareness always. But we have to also think about when life begins, and what it means for the child in the womb that right now doesn't have much protection or any here in our state, unfortunately. So having the Mass before the rally and march, I think, certainly helped with attendance and participation. And I remember being on a Zoom call when you brought the question to Cardinal Tobin and the bishops about the possibility of having a Mass at the request of the Respect Life directors. And Cardinal Tobin didn't hesitate, nor any of the bishops, to say yes, that would be. And I know Bishop Checchio had another commitment, but again, Bishop O'Connell's beautiful homily. Bishop Sullivan was there with the new bishop, coadjutor.
You won't be the baby bishop of
That's
New Jersey
right.
anymore.
That's true. I didn't think of that. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I thought it was wonderful to see that we were able to have the Mass as well.
I've been with the conference for 13 years. I started in the November of 2012, and I've never been part of a statewide event like that. So obviously, when the request was made, I had a lot of questions, and my wife always reminds me. She goes, "Don't shoot down every idea," because I'm usually the one that tries to find like the landmines that you want to defuse before you go into a planning process. And
or make a request.
Right. And she's like, so my wife always reminds me of that. So when I hear about statewide collaboration and trying to get all these people in Trenton, I'm like, well, we're going to park, are we going to do this? And there was a real let go and let God moment. And I think that came as we were planning it, and you and the other bishops were showing your support for this and your enthusiasm for it. It was like, okay, well, if the bishops are behind this and they're going to make the effort to come. We talked about Cardinal Tobin, when he left the next day for...
He had a pack to be away for a month.
Right. But I can tell you, and I don't think I'm going outside of breaking any confidentiality here. I mean, he rearranged his schedule. I think he was going to leave earlier for Rome to get there and get settled for the synod, and he basically pushed it to the 11th hour, his departure to the 11th hour, just so he could be with us at that Mass. And I think, having you and the Cardinal and the other bishops present is what drew a lot of people to the Mass because of all the bishops making that commitment to be there.
Well, it wouldn't have been much without the crowd that was there, and so each person that came, we're grateful, and hopefully it's something we can build on.
We're just waiting for somebody. Somebody asked me if we were already planning the plans for the Mass. I said we don't have the date for the March next year. So once we get that date, we'll start putting things in place. But I don't think we're going to have to do as much as we did this year because we know what.
We're trying to give you a heart attack already.
That's okay. That's okay.
And it was, on my end, with the communications directors with the diocese, it was a great collaborative effort. We had Cecile was down there collecting some social media footage, and she wrote a great article for the Beacon this week. But we also we shared, your office, I think, covered the cost even for the pool photographer who provided photos to all the diocesan newspapers. So it was great. Yeah, it was healthy and collaborative in all sorts of ways in all sorts of different offices. So why don't we move into elections and
now
voting?
We can sit back and relax because there's nothing happening between now and the middle of November, right?
Right.
So
that's right.
I mean, you guys must get. What do you tell if people come up to you and they say, "Jim, who should I vote for in November? Bishop, who should I vote for?" What do you guys tell them, and how do you help them form their consciences?
Go to our website or the NJCC website and read Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, right? You have a copy there.
Yeah, right here.
Here it is. It's,
I don't know if that's the most recent copy.
Right. Well, it's available online with the most recent introductory the introduction from the USCCB. So maybe you want to share a little bit about that. And just by way of introduction, quotes Pope Francis, and hopefully every Catholic knows it really is. And the blessing that we have as citizens comes with responsibility. We can choose our leaders and our priorities, but to do that we have to vote. And as hard as that decision can be, Pope Francis talked about sometimes it seems like the lesser of two evils, but we can't exempt ourselves from that responsibility. So if you're struggling, this document can help, and Jim can share a little bit about that.
Sure. No, so actually two things I just want to say leading into that. One, as I was preparing for this our podcast, our gathering today, and this kind of relates to what, Jay, your question about if people ask, who should I vote for? Mm-hmm. And there is frustration. Bishop, I'm sure you get letters and emails, there's frustration that the church doesn't definitively say vote for candidate A or candidate B, or we put our endorsement. And obviously there's some legal reasons why we can't do that have impact on our tax status. But that's not why we don't endorse candidates. Because we recognize participation in the civil life, and this is what I thought about last night, as a moral act, and moral acts involve choice. It would almost be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would almost think it's contradictory to the Catholic faith if the church were to come out and say every Catholic should vote for candidate A or candidate B, because why? It denies their gift of free will.
Yeah, we have to make decisions in conscience, a well-formed conscience. But there's many reasons. As again, I understand some would say the bishop should tell everyone you can't vote for this candidate or you should vote for that candidate. But that's not. We believe how the Holy Spirit has been guiding us for 2,000 years. It goes back to the Lord Himself, as I quoted some of what He teaches us, and St. Paul talking about our responsibility as citizenships, and the magisterium, the teaching of the church, saying we got to be part of our community and be contributors to the common good. So that we need to be part of it, yes. But voting for particular candidates, or certainly we can't align ourselves with here in the United States with a particular political party, because neither is going to be.
I don't think either wants us right now.
Right. So yes, as frustrating as it might be for some, the church does not say you should vote for candidate A or B, but here's the values. Look, inform yourself, be aware, prepare, pray, but go to the voting booth and vote according to your conscience.
Right. Because you can't have, and to expand upon that, it's not just voting that faithful citizenship talks about. I think if you go through the document, and I was, again, preparing for the podcast and for this season, don't think voting, the act of voting, is mentioned. It's not the focus of this document. It's the focus of the document is how do we involve ourselves in society, in the public square, and voting's essential, and that gets the most attention. But what are the election days this year? November 5th. So the question then becomes, what are we going to do on November 6th, 7th, 8th, and moving forward? I mean. Unfortunately, now it seems like you can never escape election season. Here in New Jersey, we have an election every year because our state elections are on the off years of federal elections. So you can't. It seems like you can't escape it. But it's not. That's not all faithful citizenship is about. It's not just about going into a voting booth. It's not just about learning about candidates. It's about how are you engaging with your elected officials? How are you forming your conscience in those off months? How are you learning about issues?
Parents and teachers, Catholic schools and religious education programs, as we're forming young disciples, we talk about service, and it's great to see parishes and young people and youth groups and being involved in community service. That's part of faithful citizenship as well, and hopefully that's leading young people as they mature to think about why, not only that I should help someone in need, but why is that person in need, and is there decisions being made by elected officials that either help the person in need or are making it more difficult for people to survive and have their basic needs and have decent work and a decent home and those things that we strive for as a human family.
Yeah, it's the two principles of subsidiarity and solidarity. It's understanding that not every decision has to be made at the macro level or the higher government level for the community, but it's also that we're not so disconnected. We have the solidarity where we can make those connections between the people who need our assistance and how our vote relates to that and how our actions outside of election season relate to that. And
you mentioned the word solidarity, and it's a principle. In Poland, it was a movement that inspired St. Pope John Paul II, and the saint that he became and the Holy Father came out of that experience of living in a people who were oppressed and went from being governed by the Nazis to the communists to saying, as Bishop Barron likes to quote, when Pope John Paul II visited as Pope for the first time, that millions of people chanting, "We want God, we want God," with the communist leaders there saying, "We might be in trouble here."
Right.
But I think, and the blessing of our Holy Fathers. If you look, through the history of the popes, but even the most recent ones, how Pope John Paul II called us to be part of building a culture of life, for example, right? Pope Benedict, the intellectual the life of the mind, and how we need to be educated to be good citizens. And now certainly Pope Francis calling us to care for our environment and listen to those who, in the Synod on Synodality, and that temptation, I think, especially as Americans, that we have to think, I'm so focused on what I know is right, and yes, there's a part of knowing that truth that makes us free, but we got to share the truth in love, and sometimes that means taking the time to listen to someone who disagrees with us, right?
That's right, and I think one of the misconceptions, at least it's a misconception that I had to correct in my own thought when I was younger, is that because somebody identifies with Catholic, they're in lockstep with all my political views. Right. I can say it was shocking the first time having I guess quote unquote political conversation with a fellow Catholic, and they were saying things that I was like, I don't agree with that. Like you're how can you be cat? And you do go through that, I guess, that gut reaction of wanting to put up a wall and kind of argue with them, but then you have to fall back and realize that we're united by our faith, we're brothers and sisters in our faith, and we have to treat them with the love and respect that God treats them with, and it does come down to having those conversations.
And Jay was reminding me, as you guys were discussing it just before we started, that there's an event coming up that could help for those who might be interested.
So
right?
the webinar that you're collaborating with the Pennsylvania
Catholic. We're extremely excited about this. So I think it's the first time in...
It's called Blessed Are the Peacemakers.
Blessed Are the Peacemakers. how Catholics can prepare for the upcoming presidential election and bring civility back to public discourse. So this is a co-sponsored event, us and my counterpart at the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. So for those who don't know, most states have a Catholic conference that represents the bishops and the church within their state houses. So Pennsylvania has one, New Jersey, New York, and then there's the USCCB, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, that represent the Catholic Church at the federal level. So we're going to work with Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. We have a representative from USCCB coming on, and we're going to talk about faithful citizenship. A lot of these concepts we're talking about in terms of solidarity, do good, avoid evil. How do you properly form your conscience? How do you prepare for the election? But then we're going to focus on how do you move past the election day. I think we can all agree, given the tone of our current presidential election, there's going to be people that are unhappy on November 6th, but we still have to work with them. We still have to come together as a country, as a community, and we're hoping that the information we can provide Catholics who attend the webinar will help guide them during those days and into the future as we move forward.
And you believe this might be the first such collaboration?
Yes. From what we understand,
and it's open to everyone?
Open to everyone. If you go to njcatholic.org, which is our website, you'll find the registration link right there. It's free.
And the date again?
October 9th, next Wednesday,
right.
And at 6:30 at night. And you don't have to leave your home, your car, if you're...
and if somebody can't watch it that night, will it be available afterwards?
Yes, we're going to record it, and we're going to distribute it so people can watch it on demand.
As I've shared with you, we have Bishop Pagliarulo, the Bishop of Bridgeport, Connecticut, originally from Brooklyn, but he's been working at the USCCB level on another important topic, which is faith formation and catechesis, and we're grateful that he's going to be with us at St. Elizabeth's University to speak to our catechetical leaders, Catholic school teachers. Father Yonader Garcia, our director of the Office of Faith Formation, has extended the invitation to those catechetical leaders and Catholic school teachers and catechists as well, and many of our priests. So there's an afternoon session, so if those who watch the afternoon session, what time does the webinar start?
6:30.
Okay, you can probably get home just in time if you go to the afternoon. If you're at the evening session, which starts at 7, we won't be able to but we could come to the catechetical session and see the webinar afterwards, right?
Watch the webinar the next day.
Right. So
there's a lot going on, a lot of good stuff, and we're going to have links in the show notes for everything we're talking about, but it's njcatholic.org, and then the USCCB Faithful Citizenship document, I'll put a link in the show notes for that. And then we're going to have on our own website some resources that point to there, and some videos that we produced with you, Bishop, about the election, and also collaborated with NJCC on.
That's the other thing I'd like to say on our website for the election. People can go there and find resources to help prepare them for...
Right, and not mean to interrupt, but I did a video with your help, and how many seats are open in the Congress from New Jersey this?
Well, you have all 12 congressional seats on the House side,
and a Senate seat,
and one Senate seat. Yes.
And then in the state,
there's the state is in an off year, so when the federal election is taking place, the state. So next year we'll have the race for governor and state assembly, and that's that's it. But it's just as important too to get to school board, local municipal elections. We just don't have the staff to track all of those elections. But we encourage everyone to follow.
And people can find out information about who represents them at the NJCC website.
At the state and federal level, definitely. There's over 500 municipalities here in the state of New Jersey, so we just don't have the resources to put all that information there. But, I think the resources we do have help guide people who are looking for that information. So we have links and resources from the state, New Jersey Department of State, which oversees their election. So you have the important dates for registering to vote. There's early in-person voting, mail-in voting. So New Jersey over the last couple of years has modified their election laws. So it's important for people to know that. You just don't have to show up on.
I got my ballot in the mail the other day.
So,
And registering to vote is important as well, right?
Yes.
And there's information there for those who want to register?
Yes. And there's even talk in the state now about same-day registration and lowering the voting age. So there's always there's a lot going on in terms of the public debate about how to encourage more people to participate. I believe the governor was in Hoboken yesterday talking about lowering the voting age for school board elections.
16, 17-year-olds,
to foster some engagement.
Yeah.
Now, that's not something the conference would necessarily take a position on, but it is fascinating, and we obviously monitor that because we have to ensure people get that information. We tell, the school board elections, I think, often get overlooked. I know.
In recent years, they've gotten a little bit more attention, because curriculum, the school board has an impact on curriculum, right?
Right. And that's where I was going with that, is that, if we get calls about some of the things that are going on in terms of the curriculum or what schools are doing.
Sometimes seeming an indoctrination of young students. We believe parents are their first educators. Parents have the responsibility, and for the state to be kind of imposing certain values or beliefs through a curriculum in a public school, it's a real concern, right?
It is a concern, and what you find though in the legislation is often that curriculum is not only implemented but designed at the school board level. So, if you want to really see that change, become involved in your school board, show
and
up
be
to
aware
meetings.
of
elections.
I think
superintendents,
right.
superintendents and business administrators also have a lot of power in public schools. As a former reporter who's used to cover school boards like nuts and bolts, mayor and council, school boards. I mean, there's a lot happening there, and not a lot of people really go out to those meetings. And you can learn about them. Just go to your school website, check out the dates for the school board meeting, and show up. And there's an opportunity to speak and have a voice locally.
I always tell the story when it comes to school boards, because you consider the power a school board has in terms of some of these issues, these important issues we're talking about, but how little people sometimes pay attention to their elections. I know in my hometown, this is about five. This is pre-COVID. We say things pre-COVID now. I know in that town there was a school board election that year. Someone I know, about 3 days beforehand, said, I want to be on the school board. I want to run for school board. And no money, no organized campaign structure, just got word out through social media that he was running for school board. He lost by 3 votes.
Wow. My goodness. Wow.
But you're talking about somebody...
Was he on the ballot? Or did they
write
in?
Right
wow.
in. Yeah.
Whoa. Wow. Yeah. And started asking people to write them in?
3 days before, 3 or 4 days, maybe it was like 5 days, but it was something like, if you're only experienced with elections as the national, where so much money's poured into it, and it's a year-long process or years-long, to think that somebody could have just said a week out, I want to be on the school board, and have that type of ability to come within that close to being elected.
That's a great story. Yeah, and it's also, we could talk about the importance of just being involved in your school board or in local
your community, right? Yeah.
Well, giving back to the community.
Not just school board, but I'm sorry. But the knowing who your elected officials are,
local mayors, right?
There's so many people that they call concerned about these issues that we're talking about, but they don't know who their state assembly representatives are, their state senator. They get confused about what's a federal bill, what's a state bill. So there's a lot of civics 101 that has to take place, and that's what we also try to do to help. I tell the story when I was working for a congressional office. I might have said this the last time I was on the podcast, but we had an issue going back and forth in the House of Representatives, and it was an energy bill. So there was the environmentalist, and then there was the energy sector, and they were both on opposite ends, and they were spending large amounts of money to get people to call the members, their House members, to say vote yes or no. And I'll never forget, I had one gentleman called me up one week and said, tell him to vote no, I don't want anything to happen to the environment. I said, okay, I took his name. The next week, the energy lobby ran their ad in the paper and on the internet, and same guy called up and goes, tell my congressman to vote yes on this bill. I'm not paying any more for heating. Same guy. And I recognized his voice, and he gave me his name, and I said, Mr. So-and-so, I talked to you last week on the same bill. You wanted him to vote yes. Now you want him to vote no. Because I have to put this information in, do you have a definitive answer? And he goes, it's the same bill? I said, yeah, it's the same bill. He goes, oh, this system's all screwed up, and he just hung up on me. So it's important to be educated and to do your homework.
And to have patience and persevere.
Awesome. All right.
And not to get discouraged, if,
right.
you know.
Well, all right, good. So we're kind of want to wrap this episode up. Bishop, any last questions for Jim, or any thoughts or reflections on anything we talked about?
No, just to thank Jim for the work that he's doing. And he says, as he does, represents the bishops at the state level, but he's representing all of the Catholic people of the state as well. So we'll keep you in our prayers, and we're very grateful. And again, we hope that many will be part of the webinar next Wednesday, October 9th, and go to the website. Yes.
And Jake, I forgot to mention, I do have a friendly wager going on with my counterpart from the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference. So just like two mayors make a bet when their teams are in the Super Bowl,
right.
Pennsylvania and New Jersey right now have a bet going on of who can have more attendees at the webinar, sign up for the webinar. So I think we're slightly ahead, but I would like more breathing rooms. The Pennsylvania Catholic Conference director, he called me up yesterday. He was doing some trash talking, saying we're going to come out in force. So, help me win this bet.
I would be open to a replay of the 2009 World Series where the Yankees beat the Phillies. So we'll have to see how that goes. But friendly rivalry is never a bad thing.
No,
right?
not at all.
Right.
No, so it's all in good fun.
Right. But let's win New Jersey. Let's get into the webinar. So one more time, the website.
NJCatholic.org.
NJCatholic.org. Great. Go to the website, try to attend the webinar, register, and we got to vote. As I mentioned that this is Respect Life Month. It's month of the Holy Rosary, this month of October, leading us into November. And we're going to have our Diocesan Respect Life convocation will take place Saturday, October 26th at St. Mary's in Denville. We'll have to, there's information on our website. Please go and consider attending in this Respect Life Month, our Diocesan Respect Life convocation Saturday, October 26th, St. Mary's in Denville, with the theme, as we so close to the election, United in Prayer for Life, Family, and Country. United in Prayer for Life, Family, and Country. That theme that doesn't, I think, get mentioned enough. We're all members of the United States. We're all fellow countrymen and women. So we can have these differences, and someone's going to win and someone's not going to win, but we're all part of the same nation, and we still are a beacon of hope for the world. Right. So that happens through the citizens who have made the country what it is over the years, and our leaders, and we have to keep that up, right? So and not the only way, but an important way to do that is anyone who's eligible to vote, that you register and you vote, and bring it to prayer, and hopefully read Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship to help you as you go into the booth.
Our website even has links to all the candidates' websites, so you can go and read about the candidate and what their various positions are. So really there's no excuse not to. Y
también en español, por los que hablan en español. If anybody's listening that knows someone who's a Spanish speaker, in the website, NewJerseyCatholic.org.
NJCatholic.org.
En español también. So invite your Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters to find the information there in Spanish as well.
The webinar next week will be simulcasted in Spanish as well.
Great.
Awesome. Great. All right, so a lot of opportunities. All right, great. Thanks again, Jim, for joining us.
Bishop, Jay, thank you.
It's
always a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Bishop, before we close out, I do want to ask you, you did share with us what you're reading currently. Any other recommendations on what you're maybe listening to or watching? Anything other than the Yankees and baseball?
I've been a fan of, I think the first podcast I listened to was Revisionist History. I've mentioned that before. Malcolm Gladwell, this New Yorker, a writer for the New Yorker, and has written many books. Apparently his first book was, which I remember listening to a long time ago, was The Tipping Point, which was 25 years ago that it came out, I guess 1999. And he's written kind of a sequel, I forget, something about The Tipping Point, Revisited or Revenge of the Tipping Point. Tipping Point, you'll find it. But on his podcast, he's now has the second episode, which I started listening to this morning, of kind of introducing or encouraging people either to order and read his book or listen to his book. It's very interesting commentary on sociology and trends and revisionist history. He looks back at things that are misunderstood or were overlooked by history, and I find him very interesting.
I was just listening to his podcast not too long ago. I listened to 2 back-to-back episodes on museums and the art history and collections.
Yes.
He's awesome. Great podcast.
Yeah.
I just over the summer read his book, Bomber Mafia.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. Excellent.
Yeah, that was a great book.
Right.
I
Stuff you never heard of before, right?
Yeah, and I thought it was a great dive into the philosophy between the British and the American view on the use of air power.
But the other thing that he does, he brings the people involved, right? I mean, it's not just these battles and this philosophy, but the people who built the planes and flew the planes and
it talks about the Nordstrom bomb site or the Nord bomb site. Yeah, that was technology that was essential.
So I'm from New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we'll have to do it again next year, maybe.
Yeah.
All right.
If not sooner.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe, comment, and leave a positive rating. Get to know us better by following Beyond the Beacon on Facebook or Instagram. Email questions and podcast topic ideas to beyond@patersondiocese.org. Discover our other podcasts, Coffee with Kupke and the Paul Street Journal. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. God bless. Happy Feast of St. Francis of Assisi tomorrow. Get those animals blessed.